The first time engineer Daniel Cross saw Princess Crystalia, she was standing perfectly still in the center of the observation dome, and he thought she was a statue. The most beautiful statue he'd ever seen, certainly. Her body was translucent quartz, shot through with veins of amethyst and diamond that caught the light of distant stars and refracted it into 1,000 dancing rainbows. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her proportions elegant and impossibly delicate, slender limbs that looked too fragile to support her weight, a graceful neck that seemed ready to snap at the slightest movement. Her face was breathtaking, with high cheekbones and large eyes that shimmered like opals, colors shifting in their depths. But she was utterly, completely motionless. "That's Princess Crystalia of the Quartzian royal family," his supervisor said quietly, following his gaze. "Don't stare. And whatever you do, don't startle her." "Why is she just standing there?" Daniel asked, unable to look away from the crystalline woman. "Because her people are living crystal. Every movement causes microfractures in their bodies. Too much movement too quickly and they shatter, literally." His supervisor's voice was grim. "She's here for the alliance negotiations. Been standing in that spot for 6 hours. She'll probably stand there for 6 more." Daniel's engineering mind immediately rebelled at the thought. That's impossible. How do they function? How do they survive? Very carefully, very slowly. The Quartzians move maybe once every few hours, and when they do, it's measured in millimeters. They can't run, can't dance, can't do any of the things we take for granted. One wrong move and— His supervisor made a breaking gesture with his hands. "That's horrible," Daniel breathed. "That's why we're trying to help them. The science team thinks there might be a way to stabilize their molecular structure, but so far every attempt has failed. The princess volunteered to come here as a test subject. Brave, considering the journey alone could have killed her. The vibrations from the ship's engines, the atmospheric changes, any of it could have caused catastrophic failure." Daniel couldn't stop staring at her. She was exquisite and tragic, a being of impossible beauty trapped in a body that was simultaneously her greatest gift and her cruelest prison. As he watched, one of her fingers moved, a bare millimeter, the tiniest adjustment of position. Even from across the dome he could hear it. A faint crystalline chime, like the ringing of the finest glass. The sound of her body cracking. Over the next 3 weeks, Daniel found himself drawn to the observation dome whenever his duties allowed. Princess Crystalia was always there, always still, always alone. The science team had given up trying to include her in normal station activities. She couldn't sit in chairs, the pressure points would shatter her. She couldn't eat or drink like other species. She absorbed energy directly from light sources, which meant she needed to stand in the brightest spots available. But mostly, she stood alone because no one knew how to interact with someone who couldn't move. Daniel changed that. "Hello," he said one day, positioning himself carefully within her field of vision but at a safe distance. "My name is Daniel Cross. I'm one of the engineers on the station. I hope you don't mind me talking to you." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with agonizing slowness, her opal eyes shifted toward him. The movement took nearly 30 seconds and was accompanied by the faint sound of crystal grinding against crystal. When her gaze finally met his, he saw intelligence there and curiosity and a loneliness so profound it made his chest ache. "I don't mind," she said. Her voice was like wind chimes, musical and ethereal. But beneath it he heard the strain. Even speaking caused her pain. "I've been reading about your people," Daniel continued, keeping his own movements minimal and slow. "The Quartzian civilization, your architecture, your art, your philosophy, it's fascinating. You've built an entire culture around patience and contemplation. We had little choice," Crystalia said, her voice carrying a hint of bitter humor. "When movement means death, one learns to find beauty in stillness." "But it's more than that, isn't it?" Daniel said. "Your people don't just endure stillness. You've made it into an art form. Your meditation practices, your crystalline resonance music. You've created something profound from your limitation." This time the shift in her expression was unmistakable, something like surprise or perhaps gratitude. "You are the first person on this station who has said anything about my people beyond pity." "I'm not here to pity you," Daniel said honestly. "I'm here because I'm an engineer and I see a problem I want to solve. Your body is living crystal. Crystal can be stabilized, reinforced, supported. There has to be a way." "The science team has tried everything," Crystalia said, and now her voice carried a weight of old disappointment. "Molecular stabilizers, resonance dampeners, even experimental nanotech. Nothing works. My people have been like this for 1,000,000 years. We have accepted our fate." "Well, I haven't," Daniel said, "and I'm going to figure this out." It became his obsession. Every spare moment, Daniel was in the engineering lab, studying crystalline structures, molecular bonds, resonance frequencies. He brought his findings to Crystalia, speaking to her for hours about lattice patterns and harmonic stabilization. She listened, offering insights about how her body felt, how the fractures formed, how movement and stress affected her molecular structure. And slowly, something else grew between them. "Tell me about Earth," Crystalia said one evening, her voice soft in the quiet dome. "What was it like to run, to dance, to move without fear?" Daniel thought carefully before answering. "Honestly, I took it for granted. I never thought about how incredible it is to just reach for something without calculating every angle, to turn my head without worrying about structural integrity, to hug someone I care about." "Hug," Crystalia repeated, the word strange in her crystalline voice. "Physical embrace. My people have no concept of touch. We cannot hold each other, cannot comfort with contact. We express affection through light patterns, through resonance songs. But I wonder," she paused and he heard the tiny fractures forming as she drew breath. "I wonder what it would feel like to be held." Daniel's heart broke a little. "I'll find a way," he promised. "I'll find a way for you to move safely, to touch, to live without fear of shattering." "Why?" Crystalia asked. "Why does this matter so much to you?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, with complete honesty, he said, "Because I'm falling in love with you, and I want to be able to hold your hand without killing you." The silence that followed was profound. Crystalia's opal eyes shimmered with colors Daniel had never seen in them before, deep purples and blues, swirling like emotion made visible. "Daniel," she whispered, and her voice cracked like breaking glass. "I have been falling in love with you since the first day you spoke to me, since you saw me as more than a fragile thing to pity. But love between us is impossible. I cannot touch you, cannot hold you. One embrace would shatter me into 1,000 pieces." "Then I'll make it possible," Daniel said fiercely. "I swear to you, Crystalia, I will find a way." The breakthrough came at 3 a.m. on a Thursday, after Daniel had been awake for 36 hours straight. He was staring at molecular diagrams when it suddenly clicked. He'd been thinking about the problem all wrong. The science team had been trying to change Crystalia's molecular structure to make the crystal stronger, denser, more resistant to fracture. But crystal didn't work that way. The harder you made it, the more brittle it became. What if instead they worked with the crystal's natural properties? What if they created a harmonic resonance field that would support the molecular bonds without changing them? A field that would essentially hold her together from the outside while allowing her complete freedom of movement. He ran the calculations 3 times, hardly daring to breathe. It was theoretically possible. Difficult, requiring precise calibration and technology that didn't quite exist yet, but possible. He sprinted to the observation dome, forgetting the late hour, forgetting everything but the need to tell her. Crystalia stood in her usual spot, bathed in starlight. When she heard his footsteps, her eyes shifted toward him with that agonizing slowness. "Daniel, what is wrong? You should be resting." "I figured it out," he said, breathless with excitement and exhaustion. "Crystalia, I figured it out. Not a molecular stabilizer, a harmonic resonance field. We create a field that resonates at the exact frequency of your crystalline structure. It would support the molecular bonds, prevent fractures from forming without changing your fundamental nature." For the first time since he'd met her, Crystalia moved quickly. Her head turned, not the slow, careful shift he was used to, but an actual turn. The sound was terrible, like a windshield cracking, and Daniel's heart seized with fear. But she didn't shatter. "Are you certain?" she asked, her voice high and strained. "Daniel, are you certain this would work?" "In theory, yes, but I'd need to build it, test it, calibrate it precisely to your frequency. And I'd need you to trust me if I get the resonance wrong even by a fraction." He couldn't finish the sentence. "It could shatter me completely," Crystalia finished. "I know, but Daniel, I trust you. I trust you more than I have trusted anyone in my 300 years of existence. Build it." It took 2 weeks of nearly non-stop work. Daniel recruited the best engineers on the station, pulled every favor he had, worked until his hands shook and his eyes burned. The device was elegant in its simplicity. A small resonance generator that would create a field around Crystalia's body, essentially cradling her in harmonic frequencies matched perfectly to her crystalline structure. But testing it was another matter entirely. "We should start small," the lead physicist said nervously. "Activate the field at minimal power, have her move just her finger." "No," Crystalia said, her voice firm. "If this works, I want to truly test it. I want to move, really move." Daniel met her opal eyes, saw the determination there, and nodded. "Okay, we do this right. Full power, full test." He positioned the resonance generator on the platform beneath her feet. "Ready." "I have been ready for 300 years, Crystalia said. Daniel activated the device. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The air around Crystalia began to shimmer with rainbow light, harmonic frequencies visible as waves of color. The field enveloped her crystalline body, and Daniel held his breath as he watched the readings. Perfect resonance. The field was holding. "How do you feel?" he asked. Crystalia lifted her arm, not the agonizing slow movement he was used to, but a normal, fluid gesture. No cracking sounds, no fractures. Her opal eyes went wide with wonder. "I feel." "Nothing," she breathed. "No pain, no stress, no fractures forming. Daniel, She took a step. An actual step, her foot lifting and coming down on the platform. The sound was a pure, clear chime with no undertone of cracking. Then another step, and another. Crystalia began to move, really move for perhaps the first time in her life. She turned in circles, lifted her arms, bent and straightened, each movement accompanied by musical chimes but no destruction. Tears, literal crystalline tears that caught the light like diamonds, began to stream down her face. "I'm moving," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "I'm moving and I'm not breaking. Daniel, I'm not breaking." She spun toward him, and before he could process what was happening, she was running. Actual running, her crystalline feet striking the platform in a rhythm he never thought he'd hear. She closed the distance between them in seconds, and threw herself into his arms. The impact should have shattered her. By every law of Quartzian biology, the embrace should have destroyed her crystalline body. But the harmonic field held, cradling her in frequencies that supported every molecular bond. Daniel wrapped his arms around her, feeling the cool, smooth crystal of her body against him. She was solid and real and alive, and she was holding him with a strength and desperation that spoke of 300 years of isolation ending in a single moment. "You did it," Crystalia sobbed against his chest, her voice chiming like bells. "You actually did it. I can touch you. I can hold you. I can." She pulled back just enough to look at his face, her opal eyes swimming with color. Then with careful deliberation she touched his cheek with her crystalline hand. The contact was cool and smooth, and he could feel the faint vibration of the harmonic field, but beneath it was something more, the simple, profound miracle of touch. "I love you," Crystalia whispered. "I love you for seeing me, for believing in me, for giving me this impossible gift." "I love you too," Daniel said, his own voice thick with emotion. "And this isn't just your gift, it's ours, because now we can be together, really together." They kissed then, and it was nothing like Daniel had imagined. Her lips were crystal, cool and smooth, but they moved against his with warmth and passion and 3 centuries of longing. The harmonic field shimmered around them, a cocoon of rainbow light and perfect resonance. When they finally separated, Crystalia laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a spring breeze. "Can I try something?" she asked. "Anything," Daniel said. She stepped back and with clear joy began to dance. It was clumsy at first. She'd never danced before, never had the opportunity to learn. But she moved with increasing confidence, spinning and leaping, her crystalline body catching the starlight and scattering it into 1,000 brilliant colors. She was grace and beauty and freedom made manifest, and Daniel thought he'd never seen anything more magnificent. The other station personnel had gathered at the dome's entrance, drawn by the commotion. They stood in awed silence, watching the crystalline princess dance, watching the impossible made real. Kivon, the Quartzian ambassador who had accompanied Crystalia, stood at the front of the crowd. His own crystalline body was still locked in the careful stillness of his people, but his opal eyes shone with tears. "Engineer Cross," he said, his voice resonant with emotion. "Do you understand what you have done? You have not just saved one princess. You have saved an entire species. If this technology can be replicated, if all Quartzians can move freely, then your people can finally live instead of just existing," Daniel finished. "Yes, that's exactly the plan." Crystalia returned to him then, breathless and radiant, moving with the easy confidence of someone who no longer feared their own body. She took his hands in hers, the crystal-to-flesh contact strange and wonderful. "My people will want to meet you," she said, smiling. "The human who taught a princess to dance. The engineer who solved a million-year-old problem with nothing but determination and love. Will they be okay with you loving a human?" Daniel asked, suddenly aware of the politics, the potential complications. Crystalia laughed, the sound pure joy. "My people believe that love is the highest form of resonance, 2 souls vibrating in perfect harmony. Your species, my species, what does it matter when our frequencies match so perfectly?" She pulled him close again, and this time when they embraced, Daniel felt the harmonic field wrap around them both. 2 different kinds of beings, holding each other without fear of breaking, building something new from the impossible. "Dance with me," Crystalia whispered. So there, in the observation dome with the stars wheeling overhead and an entire station watching in wonder, a human engineer and a crystalline princess danced together. 2 souls who had found each other across impossible divides, who had turned limitation into liberation, who had proven that love could bridge any gap. Her body was living crystal, and every move had once risked shattering. But a human had stepped in, had seen past the fragility to the strength beneath, and had given her the freedom to truly live. And in doing so, he had found his own freedom, the liberation that comes from loving someone completely, without reservation, without fear. The dance continued long into the night, a celebration of the impossible made real, of love that refused to accept limitations, of two hearts beating in perfect harmonic resonance. Forever,